Next item is approval of the minutes from the July 1st special council meeting. Everybody should have the minutes in front of you. Has everybody had one?
They were also sent that night.
Yep. They were emailed by Jane, and copies in front of you. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes?
The only thing I'd like to add, and it's not that important. Purposely being quiet. The only thing on the minutes that I noticed was I had made some comments after and they're not, none of them are in there, not that it's that important, but obviously it looks like I didn't say anything at all, and if I remember correctly, I think I even had to stand because we had a problem with the mic, but again.
If you want to, I can amend them.
No, I mean.
The problem is there was no recording for me to go back to and
right.
listen to, so I was furiously going by notes, but if you want them in here, if you think that it's important.
To try to reconstruct what I said, it's fine, but I just noticed that it looked like I didn't say anything, but I did, and
okay.
But it is what it is.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion to approve the minutes of July, is it 1st? Motion to approve the minutes from the July 1st, 2025 special council meeting. I make that motion. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Can I
abstain because I wrote them?
Sure. Steve, you weren't here, so you abstain. Next item is public comment. Public comment is being offered before the council agenda items below to get the opinions of our community before we begin the discussions. Public comment is for in-person attendees only. Please approach the microphone, identify yourself, including your choice by district address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please note, in an effort to move the agenda forward in a timely manner, you will be allotted 1 opportunity for public comment. All additional comments can be addressed to council members after the conclusion of the council meeting, and we also encourage you to email council members with comments. Who would like to come forward with comments? Yes.
Carolyn DeLeo, 201 Colonel John Gardner Road. So I have
it's on Tuesday.
It's not on?
Yeah, I'll put that on.
That's live. Okay. Yeah, okay, this is probably just as well. Okay, so I have a few comments. One, I sent all of you an email about the bylaws and my suggestion and recommendation for looking at section 2. If you want to discuss that further later, I'd be happy to discuss that with you. I'd also like to make a comment about the lack of a meeting after June of 23. And the reason, and both Steve and Faye should recall, is that we were pretty much done with the bylaws, except for the voting changes, which obviously couldn't get done and still couldn't get done. Why that was not taken up again in this session is a mystery to me, because we really should have looked at it, particularly in light of the fact that you want to do the financial years, which in total I don't have a problem with, but I have a problem with some of the language. Section 5, for example, last line of that says at least 2/3 of the qualified voters. It should say qualified voters present at the meeting. If you had to do 2/3 of the qualified voters, you don't know who those are. You don't know how many there are. Okay? In the section 6, most grants are reimbursed grants. In other words, we have to put up the money first, and then we get reimbursed. Okay? So having this in here the way it's written doesn't work. If you're going to say non-reimbursed expenses, that's something completely different. But grants are reimbursable grants. And again, on the last line, you say qualified voters. You need to say qualified voters that are present. Section 7, you're looking at reducing the amount of revenue that's coming in And estimates come up somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000 in revenue, which would not be, collected. How are you accounting for that in the budget? And where are you gonna make it up? In the next paragraph, you're in conflict, I believe, with the town. You can't decide what exemptions to say, you're not gonna accept. If the town accepts the exemption, we have to accept the exemption. The district does not have the power to override the town, and so you must be in compliance. And there was also a thing on the levy and, the 4% and stuff. I don't really have a problem with that, except that it's in conflict at the current time with the charter. And we just have to fix the charter. Okay, fix the charter. In 2022, the council didn't like that the charter commission had gone forward and worked on, well, this is kind of important. The council had worked on the other than voting changes. And the council said, oh no, we're going to do it. 3 years later, it still hasn't been done. If this had been addressed, much of what's a mess now would not be a mess. Lower? That's not me, that's over there. Again, out of fairness to everyone, if you group has a 2-year point, just put up your agenda and so that this is real. Yeah, I think you adjusted, but you adjusted too low. Can you still hear us? I can hear you. Okay.
I wanna see if this goes to something, this goes to this one from here.
Okay, so lower it up. That should be good. I'll put it back.
Who's next?
There's someone off the next.
Okay, Tony's doing the time. Yes, please.
Robert Patterson, 8 Parkman Road. First of all, I want to thank Janice for stepping up for the second time. Our clerk quit on the eve of the election. Very long conclusions, but I think Janice, at a minimum, ought to make sure, we got to make sure she gets paid for her work. That's the line, that's a large part of the clerk's annual job, and I don't think it's fair to have one person collect the pay, quit on the eve of the election 2 times, and leave someone else to bail them out and not get paid. I'd recommend she get paid. As to the bylaws, listen, the bylaw changes sound like there still are the things that need to be cleaned up. They're not fully baked, based on what I heard Carolyn say. But more importantly, before we start giving more things up for a vote to the voting population, we got to figure out what the voting population is. In this case, we're going to be turning over the decision to make capital improvements in the fire district to the current voting pool, which consists of at least a third of people who don't live here at all. I can assure you, those people are not going to approve any capital expenditures for a district in which they don't live and for which they receive no benefit. It's like asking me to chip in for improvement to the beach club. So what I think we need to do is not put these things forward for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think they're fully baked. And number 2, the most important thing to do is to figure out the voting pool, because otherwise you'll have people voting on things, the most important things we do, like perhaps fixing up the community center. I can assure you the Beach Club people will vote no, and I don't blame them. They don't live here. We need to figure out the voting pool before we start putting before more matters before them for voting. And I'll repeat again, like a broken record, All we need to do is to follow what your lawyer said and identify those people who do not belong to the voting pool and amend the charter to remove them. Of the 2 charter committees, there are 8 different people, 5 are present in this room right now. It's not that big a deal. We can get a meeting of the 2 charter committees and, like adults, finally, after 6 years, just make a hard decision and move on. And that's what remains to be done. Until that's done, you should not be putting matters of this importance before a voting pool you know is flawed.
Who's next?
Anita Langer, 241 Colonel John Gardner. You know that over the years, I was the bylaw chair for many years. So I am familiar with the charter, and I'm very familiar with bylaws. I see that there was, on May 21st, there was an informal financial committee meeting. And it was to introduce a preliminary discussion on budget ideas. And number 2, it says, welcome public comment from residents to share ideas, concerns, and feedback. I don't believe that ever took place, so I'm a little concerned about that. And then I did a little research into my charter changes. Do you know how many charter changes there have been over the years? Anybody here in this room know? It was in 1932 the charter was written. There were charter changes in 1956, 1966, 1974, 1976, 1982, and 1984. In all those years, certain things were never changed. Some minor issues were changed. Never was the ability to tax. And my concern is that many of the financial proposals, Section 6, Section 7, Section 8 of the proposal put out by Dave conflicts with the charter in many places. I can sit down and do that with you. I'd be more than happy to do it. The biggest issue is to put a 4% or 10% cap on revenue is actually conflicting big time with the charter. The charter allows the mill rate not to exceed 7 mills. And all those changes, they never changed that. So your proposals, unfortunately, conflict with the charter. So we would have to change the charter first. On another issue, since I only have 3 minutes, is I would like to talk about not the voter pool right now. Bob did a good job, but I'd like to speak to dilution of votes. I'm not at all.
I've got 10 seconds.
Okay. Section 72 and 73 under count 4, unconstitutional dilution of votes. Judge Taft Harder speaks to the right to have your vote not diluted. And that's under the U.S. Constitution and the Rhode Island Constitution, and falls in line with the misappropriation of voting rights in any local government. So I agree with Bob that what you do need to do is look at the charter, and you cannot go against both what Judge Taft Harder said and the United States and Rhode Island Constitution. Thank you. Now, I
think that podium needs to be lower for most people. Anyone else interested in coming forward with public comments? Anyone else for public comment? No, that's it. Goes to to the, council, does everybody want to write everything that anyone has said?
I, in reference to the finance meeting that you brought up, I led that meeting. We actually had two sessions. The first one was to solicit feedback from the residents on what they wanted to put into the budget for this year. And we got several good ideas that we were able to build into it. And so that was the first meeting I had. And then the second meeting was the initial reading of the budget with the council. And so those meetings were definitely held. And like I said, I thought they were very good in terms of giving the finance committee some guidance in terms of some things that they maybe wanted to include in the transfer.
But these items discussed at that time, the financial
No,
changes?
no, it was more board to pick up potential projects, the things we should consider. Give you an example, like playground here at there. Another thing that was brought up was the dock over at the pond. And the road was another thing that was brought up by a resident. So there was some, like I say, some good ideas and some stuff, and we took those into account when we prepared the budget for this year.
But these items, these changes were not discussed.
No, that was it was only for the 24, 25, 26 budget or something.
So we did not talk about the bylaws, about these particular fiscal responsibility, proposed bylaw changes at either of today's budget meetings. We did talk about capital spending. We did talk about the 4% and the 10%. But there were other meetings that we held, council meetings, where this discussion about fiscal responsibility came up a number of different times. One thing I do want to mention is that the last council meeting, I believe there were a few people who stood up and asked whether or not we had read the meeting minutes of the bylaws. And I think, John, that's what you alluded to in terms of your comments that were not in the meeting minutes. And I think you had said that you were surprised that there had been bylaw meetings and these fiscal responsibilities did not end for the bylaws. So I personally, I'm not sure what everyone else did, but I went back and I looked at the meeting minutes that were posted on the Secretary of State's website. The 3 months that were not posted, I think they were January, June, and July of 23. Sounds like maybe there wasn't a meeting in July of 23, but I reviewed all of the other ones beginning in November of 2021 through the last one posted, which I believe was May of 2023. So in those bylaw minutes, they were focused mainly on changes in ordinances, lots of discussion about changes in ordinances. There were some discussions about parking, trash pickup, the harbor, boating safety, beach safety, and there was a lot of discussion focused on the voting election as well. So I could only find maybe 2 references to fiscal responsibility. One was made by Faith, and there I believe was a comment made by Richard Mercier as well. So with regards to the bylaws committee, they did a lot of work on a lot of different things, but I don't think they ever did any work on fiscal responsibility. So from my personal position is I thought that this was very important. Particularly when we take that mill rate of 7 mil and we multiply it by the assessed property value. We are talking about an outrageous, the potential for an outrageous amount of spending in this community. And that is of concern to me. We don't all agree on the same thing, as we can see, and some people may want different things. I believe that the council, probably the most important responsibility that this council has, is to manage the finances of this community and to do that in a responsible way. So a number of different individuals on this council, as well as our treasurer, Lori McCarthy, had raised the issue and the concern about the amount of spending that could go on in this community if we did not make some changes and rein in the potential to spend that amount of money. And that is the origin and the basis of where this discussion came in about fiscal responsibility. So in terms of the bylaw committee, was it considered to bring it to the bylaw committee? I will say it was not, because it was not something that was previously tackled by the bylaw committee. So we were not trying to take over something that had previously been discussed. We were trying to move something forward in a thoughtful and responsible way for the benefit of the entire community. So that's, that's all I have to say in terms of some of the statements that were made, last week. So, if anybody else has any additional.
Yes, I'd just like to add that, for over 4 years since I've gone to budget meetings, I've gone for just about every type of meeting, in the fire district. I have been an advocate of developing fiscal responsibility bylaws because of my experience in municipal government and state government, and also because my husband's experience as the state-appointed fiscal advisor to 2 cities, Woonsocket and East Providence, both of whom were having serious financial problems, and the state stepped in and assigned him to work with the council and with the town management to make sure they stayed solvent and did not end up like Central Falls. So this is a concern of both of us as permanent residents here for over 4 years. When I ran last summer, I discussed it often with Leslie McKnight when we were preparing for our campaigns. I was in my handout, I was very clear. One of my top priorities was fiscal responsibility bylaw changes. And my very first meeting, I outlined what I believed I would like to accomplish for the community, and that was top priority. Now, we got involved with the charter this year. The minute we wrapped up the charter, I turned to the fiscal responsibility bylaws. It is not uncommon for council to look to people within the community with expertise and or people within the government to prepare reports and to give them a springboard to start the council discussion on in what direction they do. And in that respect, my husband, Paul, with his background, did draft preliminary forms, a form that the council could decide what they wanted to do. We had, I believe Jane says, is on the agenda about 5 times since about February. And well, I don't know how many times, but it was there. In any event, we are a council that want to move something forward. We believed in this when we took office, and we're trying to further this community. And it is something that is beneficial to the community, and we need to move forward. Now,
just say one thing. You're mischaracterizing what rest of us are saying. No one is suggesting that we shouldn't have some of this. What we're saying is that there are errors in here and that you need to
give us the opportunity and we'll be discussing your suggestions as we go through the meeting.
If I could just say, we want to get through this, we want to, go forward. We had a lot of dialogue last time. We think it's best that we just have the open comment at the beginning. We asked for comments since the last committee meeting. I believe that Jane sent out a recommendation for people to send us information, and we did.
And I haven't received information.
I've received information. I think a number of us have received emails, and those emails have been taken into consideration, as well as the comments that we received during the last meeting. So I'd like to move forward now from public comment to item number 4, unless anybody has anything else they want to mention.
Well, we can talk about ours, because our takeaway, I can wait till item 4, because our takeaway from the last meeting was to go consult with council.
Yeah, okay.
So we can start with this, but certainly if you have something.
No, I'm good.
Tony, you all set?
Yes.
Okay. All right, item number 4, fiscal responsible bylaw changes. The first item is update on consultation with the Bonnet Fire District Legal Counsel regarding process of proposed bylaw changes and comments by Councilperson Faith LaSalle, council designate. So at the last meeting, I think there were questions about whether or not there had been consultation. with our legal counsel, and there has been, so I'll let Faith update.
Just before I start that, I just want to point out about section seven, the tax exemptions. In light of the feedback, there's some questions that people have had about the operationally, how are we going to implement this? In light of the fact that Lori McCarthy, who is our treasurer, her mother passed away yesterday, and we need information from her. I am recommending that we just postpone that section seven for further study, because it may not be feasible to even implement.
Okay,
So that's all,
just to state that I did receive feedback from Lori, because I was asked this question as well. She doesn't think that financially it would be a huge impact, but we do not have the data to make that analysis. And administratively, we don't know what the town is managing, so we provide us for data. So based upon that, we listened to what you had to say, we went back, we reached out to people, experts within the community, and we made the decision, that would be.
Oh, we have it,
Making recommending, and I agree that
I
I should
asked
be.
my fellow council members, are you in agreement that we just table the section seven on tax exemption at this point?
The numbers are one and two, but.
Oh,
As a tax collector,
I'm worried about the revenue reduction.
well, no, there will.
okay, it's off the table. Another thing, I did have some conversations with Kristen DeBurgess, Adrian, and Paul Luber had some conversations. I thank them very much for reaching out to the council and giving us their input. Based upon Adrian's recommendation, the first matter would, well, before I get to that, let's report out the law, before we get the discussion with Tom Dickinson. Jane and I both had a conference with Tom Dickinson, the district's attorney. Was it, what day? Wednesday, was sometime last week before the holiday. And I also have had communications with him earlier this week. One issue I want to say is he has reviewed the specific proposed amendments, and he sees no conflicts with the charter. Neither do I. You have the opinion of the district attorney. So long as the mill rate remains with the rate established by the charter, the proposed changes will be permissible. The establishment of a rainy day fund and other dedicated funds are consistent with prudent municipal management practices, and again, seem well within the scope of what is reasonably necessary to enable the fire district to meet its corporate purposes under Section 5 of the charter. Now, we also had a conference with him, and just so everyone knows, there's no requirement to have any committees except for a nominating committee in our rules. And also, I found another interesting provision that, so basically, the mill rate is not being changed, so there is no conflict with the charter. And I've discussed this over the year with other people, other attorneys that I know. So you have it from the district attorney, with the attorney for this district. What it is no different than if a town has a 4% cap by state law on what they can spend, and the town decides to limit themselves, and they're only going to raise taxes 2%. So it is not a conflict, and it is consistent with good municipal practice, which is what is being followed today in Rhode Island. I doubt if any judge is going to criticize a fire district for putting a cap on spending in light of the fact that Rhode Island has a law that a city and town can only go up 1% without special permission from the General Assembly. Now, there's also a provision, this whole idea of whether it says right here, I think it's section, let me just get section 8. Section 8 even says, provided, however, it's a section talking about how we look at the valuation of taxable property within the district by looking at the assessment set by the town. And the last line says that the district may adopt such reasonable bylaws with respect to the assessment, collection, and payment of taxes as it deems proper. A cap on spending is consistent with making a limitation on the assessment, and again, it's within our charter. So with that, I think we could, do you have anything to add on that? You were also on that conversation.
If you want, I can read my notes.
No, but anything on that? Yeah.
You basically covered it.
Okay. Oh, I think the other thing was the conflict issue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
you want to address
yeah,
that?
because I personally asked, and these are my notes from the meeting. I personally asked Tom whether or not, because it was Faith's husband that created the draft here, because there was some undertones that they got, had, I guess, opinion of impropriety somehow or conflict. And, he said, these are his words that I took notes, there is no conflict of interest with a member of the community, particularly one with expertise in the area, preparing draft bylaws regardless of relationship with an elected official, as there is no monetary gain to be achieved by the individual.
And just so everyone knows, conflicts in terms of municipal and state government is not what the common person thinks a conflict is. We had a situation this year where both Jane and I were challenged, saying that there was a conflict for us to serve on the charter committee, and there was also a conflict for us to sit on the council and vote on a proposal in the charter. And in fact, people said in a public meeting that that was a conflict, and that we shouldn't be able to vote as the council, and that we were doing something wrong. The ethics commission said we were doing nothing wrong. We had every right to vote as Democrats. And moreover, I informally had already asked the legal department of the ethics commission. They'll give officials informal opinions. And they had already said, I have no conflict. So if people have a misunderstanding about what conflict of interest is in the context of government, you might want to check it out before you accuse people of having conflicts of interest. Okay, so now let's turn to the actual proposal.
Can I make a suggestion? Can you take each section on its own, talk about it, and then say yay or nay to that section, rather than try to do that?
I agree with that.
Because it just,
Yeah.
I mean, this is what makes it, well, obviously, section one, there really is no question, you're not making any.
Okay, okay. So why don't we, section one, we're keeping April 30th. I do want to insert a recommendation that Adrian Burgess made. It makes a lot of sense.
Under section one?
Under section one?
It's actually between section one and section.
Okay, because if we approve this to go on the ballot, we have to be very precise about what we're doing tonight. So for section one, my recommendation is just to strike it. It doesn't need to be on the ballot. It's already the date.
Okay, got it. Okay. Then, right after section one, so we're gonna strike it from the ballot, section one, because we're not changing. Then we're gonna add this: the district shall establish 3 funds. A current account of these funds shall be provided annually at the end of the fiscal year. I believe that was Adrian's recommendation, and it sounds like a very good idea. So that would be an addition. That those two, the district shall establish 3 funds. A current account of these funds shall be provided annually at the end of the fiscal year.
What are the 3 funds?
Yeah. Then we go into the funds up, and then we go into section 2. Okay. Or would you like to name the funds, John? The funds are.
Well, either that or sections 2, 3, and 4 would be subsets of that, because
Yeah.
that's the funds they're referring to, right?
Right.
So should it be should we rename it section one, or should we say section two with the introduction, A, B?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so we'll make it section 2 through A, B, and C for each of the funds. Okay.
Okay, so the fund is gonna be, the capital reserve fund will be A. The storm infrastructure fund will be B.
1A, 1B.
No,
No, one.
Or,
no, one exists. One still exists, so
Okay.
maybe two.
All right.
Okay, so I thought we were gonna strike one
Yes, we are.
for purposes of the ballot. Okay, so just say strike. Section 2 will now be section 2A, which will be capital reserve fund. Section 2B, which will be storm infrastructure repair fund. And section 2C, which will be operating reserve surplus. Why don't you, when you get there, why don't you call that one and two? You know, tell you how to consist, okay? Okay, so we're on 2A. This is the capital reserve fund. The district shall establish a capital reserve fund dedicated to the maintenance and replacement of equipment, software, and capital assets. I know there was a concern about leasing agreements. I eliminated that from this draft. Each fiscal year, an amount equal to 5% of the previous year's tax levy will be allocated to the capital reserve fund at the discretion of the council. Any amount greater than 5% of the prior year's tax levy may be allocated to the capital reserve fund from the operating surpluses of the previous years. And that allows the council to add more money to this capital reserve fund. So it gives us the discretion to do that. Any discussion?
And again, just for the purposes of it, if we can move forward with this on the ballot, the second paragraph there, the capital reserve fund shall be considered minimally funded,
Yeah, well, why don't we read that? The capital reserve fund shall be considered minimally funded at $100,000 and fully funded at $500,000. The reason we have $100,000 for the minimum is at the present time, we only have 128, so we couldn't make it more than that, or we would have to, find it in taxes this year. If the capital reserve fund falls below the minimal funding amount, the budget allocation for the fund in the following year must be at least 10% of the previous year's tax levy. Once the capital reserve fund reaches the maximum funding amount, the annual funding allocation of 5% is suspended until the capital reserve fund falls below this max. Does anyone have any discussion?
John, a question to you, we got to think to Lori, about financial sort of, that 128,000, isn't that the cash surplus from prior years, that capital reserves thing? Right. Okay, so that, and I'm just curious, can that be tied out annually to each surplus from prior years? I don't know, ask Lori, I don't know what years that was funded from, maybe even before her time, I don't know, but the point of it is that is what we call the fund where we want to spend something that's not in the budget, that's where it's gonna come out. No, yeah, I got you, but maybe the description of that should be maybe, because it is surplus or. Yeah, but again, it's, the main purpose of this fund though is for capital funds. Right. So like, if the roof needs to be replaced or something along that. Also, the other thing, like it or not, if we jump into, section B, which is the storm infrastructure, I mean, we have that funded this year at $35,000. And I don't know if you remember 2 years ago when we had all that, the storm damage at the beach. I mean, we paid over $60,000. So if we had that similar to that in this current year, any money over that 35 would have to come out of this fund.
There also is a later provision for extraordinary circumstances too. So we got another provision for that.
I understand, but there's no money for it. That's the issue. I mean, if you're left talking about where the money is at, the money is in this 128. So, if something big comes along, I don't know what we'll have to worry about that to get to it.
Well, the important thing is to try to get something in place so we stop building these accounts. So
do we have?
Right. Well,
Well, is it,
no, the concept makes sense. I guess the biggest concern I have is that it's a long way from $128,000 to $500,000. And if you're putting only 5% into there, and that's 5% of the budget, I mean, the budget is $500,000, so 5% of that, 25,000. I mean, it would take a number of years before we got to that.
You have to start somewhere.
No, what I'm just saying is, yeah, I mean,
Without putting a burden on our taxpayers, you have to start somewhere.
I'm just pointing it out.
You know, I know you don't want to.
okay,
But
excuse me, Tony, did you have any comments?
No, I'm in concert with, lockstep with John, that it would take a long time to get to 500,000.
But we have to start somewhere to go with.
I would like,
And we can, excuse me, we can have, you can amend bylaws if we feel that it has, let's get something in place to do it.
I'd like to say something, because we've been putting 5% in every year. Steve, you must remember this from prior years in budgets, we have always put 5%.
Okay,
Into this.
let's move forward to the next item.
And then it would be consistent apparently with Steve, that's been done. So it's a good starting point. We have it solidified, we have it in writing, and, we know in the future councils will have, an outline certified.
And I just wanna clarify, because we have been putting money away. This, is earmarked only for storm repair.
Oh, we're on that, we moved on to storage. Sorry. And if we have them put it away, that's a great practice, but we're trying to kind of memorialize it, so that there can't be any changes, because there are different affections, how it goes the other.
Do we want to vote on them individually? We want to discuss them individually, do we want to vote on them?
Yes, let's vote, let's discuss and vote, I think that'll work.
Discuss each one and then vote. All right, so, do we have a motion to establish a capital reserve fund? For the district shall establish a fund dedicated to the maintenance and replacement of equipment, software, capital assets. Each fiscal year, an amount equal to 5% of the previous year's tax levy will be allocated to the capital reserve fund at the discretion of the district council. An amount greater than 5% of prior year's tax levy may be allocated to the capital reserve fund from operating surpluses of previous years. The capital reserve fund shall be considered minimally funded at $100,000 and fully funded at $500,000. If the capital reserve fund falls below the minimum funding amount, the budget allocation for the fund in the following year must be at least 10% of the previous year's tax levy. Once the capital reserve fund reaches the maximum funding amount, the annual funding allocation of 5% is suspended until the capital reserve fund falls below this maximum. We have a motion.
I make a motion that the council approve of the capital, setting up a capital reserve fund bylaws, which will be placed on the, agenda for the annual meeting to be voted on by the people.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay, one discussion first, because I'm gonna let you know, I am not gonna agree with this motion. I think the amount is too low. I think if we really think $500,000 reserve is what we really need for this fund, I don't think we should wait 20 years to get to that if nothing ever gets spent. And yeah, there may be some pain in the beginning, but again, if we really believe $500,000 is what we need in this fund, I think it needs to happen sooner than later. And that is, I agree with the concept. I think it's a great idea. I just think it's gonna take a while, especially if we start spending money toward it, which we have done every year, that, it will take a long time to get to that target that we're trying to get to, and I think we should get to it soon.
I hear what you're saying, John, obviously we can't predict the future or whatever, but one of my concerns being an accountant is that I'm just right now, all our surplus from prior years' budgets or whatever is the 128,000, if I'm not mistaken, it's in the capital reserve fund right now. So, you know, we can, it's not wrong, I guess, so we just gotta make sure we keep that recorded, you know, we gotta make sure it equals, we gotta, at the end of the day, right? It's important not to have too much, you know, under budget or whatever, but we can even we're gonna have 3 accounts here that are gonna have cash balances, obviously, yeah. And maybe some of that cap reserve right now, which is, so, you know, maybe we can start the other accounts as well too, at this point as well, right?
Right.
Okay. I just wanna make sure, cause.
Yeah,
that's
I think the important thing is, we have to start somewhere, we can't overburden the taxpayers, with increased taxes. As some of us know, the budget now is over 514,000. Within less than 10 years ago, it was half of that. So everything has been going up. Fortunately, we've had a lot of building here with new homes. We've also had an increase in property. But, I think we have to start somewhere.
We possibly amend, the motion with John, with a caveat saying that we'll address it a year from now as far as, increasing the.
Well, you just do it when you have a budget, just that you do it when you have a budget.
But the problem is, this is,
That, I just think should we possibly amend the motion, possibly relook at this again next year, possibly increase the 2A.
I think we want to get a bylaw in place.
Correct.
You know, John, do you have another number you want to suggest?
again, all this thing with the financial matters, I am a great proponent of saving money and not spending people's money. But again, the fact that we have, I consider a small budget, $500,000, that if you are a municipality that has a $20 million budget, yes, these numbers probably make a lot more sense. But I'm just concerned that, you know, and maybe if I wasn't here at that storm 2 years ago, I'd probably feel a lot different about it. But you know, one of our biggest assets that we have is our beaches. And if we are hamstrung, what we can do to those beaches by what we're doing here tonight, right? I mean, that is my biggest concern about all of this.
If you see down, there are other provisions, if you have.
No, I've read this, Nate. I've read this, but it's not gonna change. I mean, I agree, and we do have a capital reserve fund. I just don't like the limitations we're putting on the funding of it, and, I mean.
Do you have a suggestion?
So Lori's recommendation was to get to the 5, right? That was that treasurer's. So the question is, how many years? We're saying about 16 years based upon what we have right now. Assuming we don't spend it more, which I understand. That's the biggest, and it's probably in a year. Right. So what is the acceleration point you want to get to the 5?
I mean, I really haven't thought through what the alternative would be. I'm just saying that what I see here would be 5% and then the 10% on here. Is it just going to take a while for us?
So I don't disagree with you, but I think it's kind of a difficult pill right now for people to swallow in terms of having the increases. So I think that's why
they won't. Obviously, they won't see it this year. We've already got the budget done for. But like as Tony said, if we're looking at next year's budget, and you know, obviously a lot can happen between now and when we do next year's budget. Find out that this hamstrings us. You know, I just don't.
It's a suggestion.
I know it is.
Charles, no, right, you know, no, excuse me,
open government is having discussions amongst each other and listening to each other's ideas and getting to a point. I mean,
and to move the community forward in a positive way.
And I'm not doing it in a positive way.
No, you're not.
I mean,
You know, I didn't mean to say that, but what I'm saying is.
So just to be able to get somebody moving forward, right? I mean, is there an appetite at this table to go above 5% based upon Johnson's?
I think that we are already getting some comments back about increasing the taxes.
Yeah. So I guess if we, I'll pick a number, let's say we say 10%, and cut it down half from 16 years to 7 years. Do we have to do 10%? Or that's our ceiling, and every year, we can make a decision whether or not the community can tolerate based on how much we've got, right?
I assume this is a secret.
Okay.
That's what I'm assuming, right there.
Yeah.
It's no more than that.
So the other reason, okay, once reaches the maximum,
Well, so again, though, if we fall below, right, we have to have at least 10% of the previous capital line.
But I mean, if we're over the 100,000, then we're at 5. And like you said, then that's where, how long you wanna wait to get it up to that level, you wanna get it at. I don't know, and maybe $500,000 isn't the right number, I don't know, but I'm saying,
well,
if that's the target.
All right,
I like the idea of what you're suggesting, is it's a ceiling, it's not what it's supposed to be, and if it's, let's say it's bumped up to 10, we could still do it by the next year's budget, if that's what we want to do.
Can I just,
okay, now, how would
I
you like
just
to?
wanna clarify that in favor of moving this motion tonight. What my caveat was, is that do we put an accelerator in here for next year, or possibly revisit increase, we put a, we look at increasing it next year.
What,
Not making the decision next year.
what is your suggestion?
well, I just wanna, I'm saying if it's 16 years, knock it down to 8.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and by doing that, you bump it up to 10%. The challenge we have is, as I said in last meeting, that my concern is we have a very fiscally minded council here. Over the years, that may change. So I just wanna make sure that there's checks and balances in here, that nobody's gonna go crazy and all of a sudden our taxes go through the roof, right? That's reflection. So, I'm just throwing out 10%, John, if that would make you feel a little better.
If you raise this to 10%, based on a $514,000 budget,
Okay.
you would have to increase by 51,000.
We have to make decisions here.
I understand that, but you need facts. You are probably going to increase the budget or the tax base
We
to
have to,
$55 per
we have
household.
running a meeting, a government.
But you need facts,
And we
you don't
need
have them.
public comment.
We did, we looked at average numbers of increases, that was provided by Lori, unfortunately, Lori couldn't share that information with us tonight, but we did look at that. in the budget. So what do we wanna do, 10%?
I mean, if you keep it at 5, I'm just gonna say no, and just don't have an unanimous vote. I mean, if that's what you want to keep that down. That's just my point, was I just think it's.
And if it goes to 10, would you?
I'd be more likely to vote it, but you shouldn't try to do that. I mean,
Okay, let's go with that. Okay, so we're gonna leave that as.
Really good thought.
Yes, I was willing to try his work, but we need something concrete that you suggest.
So we had Faith make a motion, Tony seconded it, as it is written.
As is written. All in favor?
I'm struggling with the fact that we can't revisit this 10% this time next year for the next election. I would.
all right, let's go to 10, and then we'll get in there, and it's.
You're getting, okay, we'll go to 10, we're getting,
Okay, all right, so you
So
wanna,
amend the motion, I mean,
do I have a motion to amend the original motion to now state, and where is the, and go. One for capital reserve fund reaching a maximum funding amount. That's about an extension.
First paragraph.
So it's
it's the first paragraph.
Yeah, second
By fiscal year, and total equal to 10%,
Up to 10%.
up to that.
So we are amending it to the second sentence, the first paragraph, to read each fiscal year an amount equal to up to 10% of the previous year's tax levy will be allocated to the capital reserve fund.
Yeah, say the word up to.
Up to,
I agree. That's what I was trying to, also agree.
and, so then it's just a little flying line. So what happens if we go below $100,000 for next year? if we're only at 128, what happens if we're at 95? Would it be 10% of the 98, 10% of 100, or 10% of the
Of the previous year's tax level.
Right, so that would be the max, no matter if we're under or over.
Okay, so do we have a motion to amend that second sentence as read?
I'll make the motion.
And do we have a second? Okay, no further discussion? All in favor? And
Okay, the next one is the storm infrastructure repair fund. This is a restricted fund with a minimum balance of 60,000. We originally had a lower number, I think, of 50. We moved to 60 after a discussion at the last meeting, and I believe Lori McCarthy was a supporter of a higher number. Shall be established for infrastructure repair caused by extreme weather events. The district council shall vote on using this fund to pay for weather-related infrastructure costs. When the fund balance at the end of the fiscal year is below the minimum amount, a budget allocation shall be made the following year to bring it up to the minimum. So this, John, is big storm.
Right, so just so you know, what's funded in the budget for this year is $35,000. So we're already 25,000 short of the 60. These are coming in.
I know, but this will be addressed.
I guess what we're saying is that that 25 plus whatever we spend this year would be brought up to 60 in the next budget.
Are people comfortable with that, or should we go back to the 50? Because that will be something that will affect taxes.
What if you don't use it? Can you put the money back in to
It
the
just
capital?
stays in reserve.
Okay.
It's all, we'll always,
Just offering it now.
it's just money for a rainy day that will be there. So yeah, if we keep it at 60, it'll be 25 plus whatever we spend.
Right.
So the reserve, when you say reserve, you mean the open reserve, C or no, or is it?
This is B.
No, I know we're talking about B, but you said, Carolyn asked the question, you know, I'm wondering, like, if we have a good year and we have operating surplus, right?
Like we had this year.
Yeah.
We gotta kind of clean the account, quote unquote, from what I understand, I'm not a government accountant, but, you know, but we clean that out, we could have some money for these, correct?
We actually talked about that during the budget.
And that was the first, the preamble to this whole too, was with any surplus we have, here's what we're gonna go and use.
I think the point is though, is if we have another bad year of a storm and we drain that, then we have to figure out where we're gonna start to build up again, but that's with any of these, right?
Yes.
So,
At a minimum, next year, if we didn't spend any money, it would be 25,000. If we spent money, it would be 25, 35,
Whatever we spend plus the 25.
So that's again, until we swallow, right? So each of these items are gonna be moving that tax amount up. So do we stay to 60,000 or do we go to?
do we wanna give ourselves flexibility to do the same thing up to?
Oh, that's very good.
I think B is more risky than A. I think, I'm more concerned about B being short at some point. If you have storms, you know, the other one, oh, okay, well, let's hold off on the roof a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but, we talked about that a little bit too. Heating system, I think, the heating system can go anytime in this building, right? You could have issues with the parking lot, and there are a number of different things, and those things are big ticket items. That's another storm related items, but.
You could put less than A, you have a product of B, up to 10%.
Right.
So you can kind of balance it that way, self-balance.
And again, to contradict myself, there's insurance for big, water and energy stuff too, so.
Very
All right,
much.
so this is mainly more for the beach itself.
Yeah.
Not like this.
This is in response to the storms, and I believe it was 60,000 we spent in one year.
No, actually, it's 50.
No, it's 60 years.
It was 60,
Yeah, that's why, that's where the 60, that's where the 60.
December of 23 is the only one.
So we had 3 storms that year. So,
Chuck, you might have already pulled that money from the abstract, or anything like that.
there was actually a budget for this.
No, it's 60,000.
And we had it in the budget, last year for 60.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we didn't have the staff, but that's where a lot of surplus came from, where they put that in that percentage and that they funded it, but trying to budget for this year, it made no sense to put $150,000 that's why we came up with this,
$60,000.
this, you know, this,
I can hear the microphone here.
So I think the up to 60,000, the up to 60,000 is a good suggestion.
I agree.
It doesn't tire people.
With a restricted fund up to 60,000.
With a minimum balance of up to $60,000 shall be established for infrastructure repair. So you want me to read that out? Yeah. So do we have a motion for section 2B, storm infrastructure repair fund, a restricted fund with a minimum balance of up to $60,000 shall be established for infrastructure repair caused by extreme weather events. The district council shall vote on using this fund to pay for weather-related infrastructure costs. When the fund balance at the end of the fiscal year is below the minimum amount, a budget allocation shall be made for the subsequent year to bring it up to the minimum.
yeah, but if you do the up to 60, then I think you need to put a minimum in.
You do.
Because, like, whether it's the 35 or.
Yeah, 35, I'm fine with that, that's what it is.
I mean, because then that way, if you go below the 35, you're at least getting it up to 35, and if you got additional money, you get it up to 60.
Yeah, if you have this in here, the district council doesn't have to vote on this, you've already got it in the bylaw.
Okay, a restricted fund with a minimum of 35,000 and up to 60,000 shall be established.
Yeah, and I think any expenditures of this nature should be voted on by the council. Whether it's in bylaws or not, we have to, the council should, for spending money on.
Well, I mean, I think it's strong infrastructure, and you need to do things right away. I'm not sure that we can cover it for.
That's right.
Madam Vice Chair, can I say something? The reason for that fund is exactly that. When we need it, we need to get resources at a meeting,
Fair enough, yeah.
so that we can't be getting to a situation where we can't spend it, or we have to go to our council to spend it.
So that's fine, we won't do that.
So I will make a motion as drafted by Leslie.
I'll read it again, we changed it a couple of times just to make it clear. Storm infrastructure repair fund, a restricted fund with a minimum balance of 35,000 and a maximum balance up to 60,000 shall be established for infrastructure repair caused by extreme weather events. Everything else remains the same.
I make a motion as drafted.
Do I have a second?
At least I hope to.
Any further discussions? All in favor? Do we have any unanimous vote on that? Next week.
The next one is the operating reserve surplus. I'm gonna have the word fund here, so it is consistent with B and A. It'll say the operating reserve surplus. The district shall establish an operating reserve surplus fund, quote, a rainy day fund to address extraordinary cash flow needs for district operations that arise from lower than expected revenues or unanticipated increases in necessary expenditures. The use of this fund is to pay for any expenditure line item requires the approval of the majority of the district council.
That's clear as mud.
I guess really we should be making a motion, a second, then we should look at this one.
Do we have a motion for the operating reserve surplus fund as stated by Faith?
The only issue I have is it looks like this looks like for anything we have left over.
Okay, why don't we make the motion the second and then the discussion?
I'm just saying there's no dollars associated with it. And so I'm just saying if we're gonna do a motion, then turn around and have to do another motion again with a dollar amount.
What dollar amount?
I don't know because,
What do we have now in our operating reserve surplus?
nothing as far as.
We have
We don't have it. We don't have it. No, not that I'm aware. I think just to give you an example, when we had to come up with the money for the
website?
well, the website, and then also for the Colonel John, for that project, that came out of the capital reserve fund.
So my understanding was that it was, when we talked about the website, that's line item. Something came up during the fiscal year, we did not have it as a line item in the budget, and that is what this was for. That was my understanding.
It's kind of unique though, right? Website thing, obviously, right?
It is, but.
Because I'm thinking, I'm sorry. I'm thinking aside from capital reserve and from the capital reserve and storm infrastructure, everything else is like, oh, you missed on your garbage budget or utilities are up a little bit or whatever, you know? I think that's just part of the game, you know? I'm wondering is that what's needed? Maybe
No, we have a bylaw.
I guess the operating reserve fund would be funded by surplus, right? Right.
If we had a surplus on the private,
I think that's what it's.
But if you're funding A and B, do you have any money left for C?
so it would only happen if we came in under expense in categories other than these above categories, right? So if our trash budget came in less, if our utilities came in less, I can't think of anything else.
It would go in this operating surplus
It
fund.
would go in numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's probably why we don't have a, sort of like a catch-all rainy day.
So this would, in my opinion, right, so we would not take that money and put it into another category, or we would not take it and give it back to the taxpayers, as we had discussed in the budget. It would limit what the council could do with any particular surplus.
Remember when we were discussing this, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first one is capital expenditures. The second one is storm, right? That's storm.
This was then,
This is operating.
right,
So we've got the three things covered. So I think, John, what I heard you say is where the other two, we have thresholds and percentages and things like that. This, we don't. We just say there's gonna be a fund and
Surplus.
a surplus.
That we can,
So,
But
Where are you gonna get it from?
Yeah,
it would, again, it would only come from if we had expenses that were less than what we had budgeted in a given year.
but where do you think the surpluses went from, 24 to 25? It didn't go in here, it went into.
Which is the capital reserve.
It went into the top two ones. And so I would say it's probably still gonna go there until we get, I mean,
but is that dangerous? Because we might need it for non-capital or non-storm.
yeah, exactly, like.
That's like the website.
Something.
didn't we compare the website though?
You can get John.
But we did, but it was a year where we didn't have. I think that, you know, you guys are the, John, you're the, and I'm not sure, I just don't want to hamstring us operational. Yeah, and I'm not sure if we can, it's just a fun year that was the surplus.
Yeah, the surplus.
Yeah, operating for the surplus. So it's really big fun, that it's the money available, it's something to look like the rest. So.
And I think we had that money left over because of that snow block.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll try again. Do we have a motion to establish an operating reserve surplus fund? The district shall establish an operating reserve surplus fund, a rainy day fund to address extraordinary cash flow needs for district operations that arise from lower than expected revenues or unanticipated increases in necessary expenditures. The use of this fund to pay for any expenditure line item implies the approval of the majority of the district council. So that's like another issue in terms of the majority of the district council. Do we have, I mean, if we do have an issue with, cash flow, do we have the ability to come back to the district council to get approved?
Well, we did do it with the website, right?
That's right, but I'm just saying, we just happen to have a cash flow issue, and you can speak to this, John, better than I can speak to it, right?
No, we were able to, through the capital reserve fund, we were able to
Funds the website.
fund our website and also pay for the payment that we made on Colonel John.
The road one.
Yes. So I mean, that's what the capital reserve fund kind of is, but, if you wanna have separate fund for operating, then, you know, we'll set it up, but I just, like I said, I just think that when you're looking at funding A and B, that's gonna come out of the same surplus that you're gonna fund the, item C.
When you do your budget, so you gotta put in that rainy day, would you like it if we eliminate
that one? You see, personally, I would create, so maybe do A and B.
Yeah.
Let's table C. You understand what I'm saying?
How do you feel?
I'm fine with that, it really is vague.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or-
well, it's meant to cover the three different categories. It's actually
Yeah.
comprehensive.
And
But
that-
until we
that's-
find, I agree, until we find A and B.
And we did find a way to source the website, so there are ways, there are ways of doing
Something comes up, we can
Right.
fix it.
Well, in fact, we do have it in software, so that would have come.
correct.
Okay, so we're gonna take,
So do we need a motion to table?
I'll make a motion, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Do we have a motion to table
the operating
reserve surplus?
Cutting it out.
Not even table, I have a motion to remove it.
Remove it for this year's consideration to be put on the back, we can revisit it.
So who made the motion, Tony?
Make the motion, I
I
said.
made the motion, Tony seconded, all in favor?
yeah, you should have.
So, just a suggestion, we need to go back then to
Yeah.
that third fund out.
Yeah, we'll go back up. Okay, so, section 5, the extraordinary capital purchases.
And the district may raise money from debt or liabilities to cover extraordinary capital expenditures. I think, was this the one that had the recent?
And I think the capital.
That it's been taken out, for which the district council deems the capital reserve fund either insufficient or inappropriate to pay. Debt obligations must first be passed by the majority of the council. Debt obligations exceeding $75,000 in the fiscal year must additionally be approved by at least 2/3 of the qualified voters through a referendum at the annual meeting or a special. And this is a check and balance provision to ensure, we are very unusual. We are probably the only recreational fire district that I know of where the entire voters do not vote on the budget. And this is a check and balance to allow the people, voters, to have a voice before any extensive debt is incurred.
Did you put the word voters present through the referendum?
It says qualified voters.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
That's what it says in the qualified present activity.
I'm making a motion to accept it.
And we have a motion to accept
The,
section 5
The amendment.
with the amendment of qualified voters present at the meeting for the referendum of the annual meeting for special meeting. We have a motion from John, do we have a second? Second from Jane. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, stage number 6, grants.
All grants, including those for the benefit of the Bonnet Land Trust, must be receive approval from the district council before authorization. Grants exceeding a monetary contribution of $200,000 by the district will be processed through a budget amendment and approved by at least 2/3 of the qualified voters present at the meeting through a referendum and an annual meeting or a special meeting. Now, the 200,000, this was blank at our last discussion, and I reached out to Janice McClanahan for authority input because she went through the big grant that we had for the Breachway, and she made an excellent suggestion that we should say monetary contribution, because in that case, there was, what was it, I think it was like 100,000 of in-kind contribution. And so this is only when they're gonna be taking taxpayer money to pay for it.
Or a loan.
Or a loan. And the reason we, the 200,000 after discussing it with Janice was because I think that whole project was, around 300,000, and that would be inclusive.
Maybe
It's
to borrow.
how much
To
is
borrow $200,000.
So I
have the money back.
and I also want to point out, I would also would like to point out that grants are not free. There was a statement that all the money comes back. It doesn't come back unless you have this like-kind services, which I understand people in the community contributed. Yeah, but there's usually a match. So when someone says you get all the money back, you never in any grant, you get all the money.
So would this be the net end out of pocket, would the 200,000 be the actual out of pocket for the district? But if I understand we have to advance X
Yes, and that number.
The unreimbursed.
Yes.
Yes, can we put that word in there, the unreimbursed?
Well, it says it are monetary.
Unreimbursed monetary, just so it's clear. It seems to conflict though, roughly, with the land trust charter. On section 5, under D, accept gifts, grants, or resources or services from any source, public or private, and comply, subject to the provisions of this act, with any terms and conditions thereof. And then it goes on to C, except from state and federal grants, agencies grants, or resources for use in carrying out the trust purpose. So if you do not allow them to accept grants, that really puts them, it takes their purpose out of the land trust charter, which was not the purpose in the beginning. The purpose in the beginning, if you read the first one, 1991, explained what the land trust was and why it was put into. It was actually put in because we were afraid that the council would at one point, or could do anything he wanted with the land. So
I
the
don't
land was
think-
put into the land.
I don't think the intent, I can see section B accepts gifts, grants, or loans of funds or resources or services from any source, public or private, and comply subject to the provisions of this act with any terms and conditions. But ultimately, the taxpayers are the ones who are going to pay. In my opinion, that's the basis. They're not trying to stack that. That's what this is. So the land trust should not have the authority to make decisions that burden the taxpayers.
But they have it in the charter.
Okay, but I believe there's again, I don't have the time to go through the entire charter here, but I believe there's another section that gives that there is oversight and there also.
There is oversight.
Right.
There is oversight, because I was very involved in writing this.
Yeah.
But the idea was to let them accept land, accept donations, accept grants, for their purpose. And
This is a monetary, unreimbursable monetary contribution of the fire district.
We're not limiting what they can accept, but if someone wants to give the land trust a piece of land or any other type of a donation to purchase land, this is when the taxpayers ultimately have to give money, correct, have to give it in kind, a monetary contribution or an unreimbursed contribution. So again, the intent is not to limit what the land trust
But
can
I
see.
think you're misunderstanding what Anita's saying. She's saying, you're saying must receive approval from the district before authorization. I don't think you can do that. Can you have a conversation and
No.
look at that?
You really, seriously, we're just limiting the unreimbursed monetary contribution other than taxpayers.
Yeah, that's all we're doing.
No, there's this, read the first, statement that says more than that. Read the first.
All grants, including those for the benefit of the church, must receive approval before authorization.
So that's what has nothing to do with money.
No, that's just, we wanna know what's going on. That has nothing to do with
There's a difference between knowing what's going on and proving it.
Well, John, the grants have always gone to the council.
No, they have not.
Okay, they haven't.
I think.
Okay, it's all,
Yes, they're in this.
Presidential appointment.
Yeah, let me just say,
Going to go against of the,
It's the mark. Yeah, you get that.
There's a difference between knowing and budget control.
if a grant comes to the land trust, can they wait for approval from the council to go forward with the grant?
We've always gone back to council to tell them about it.
Before you file.
Yeah, well, usually, because the land trust is under the fire district, it depends on the grant.
Right.
So, with URI, for example, the land trust was actually the ones that signed it, but we still had to go through the council till they knew about it.
But I guess
so they got the funding.
So I guess,
Well, the council had, because the thing was that the council had to approve the $17,000 that we needed.
right.
They had to put it in the budget.
Right.
In order for us to use that money to pay
So
our net.
if
So
we
we can
eliminate the
always-
first line, right, that the council has to approve it, and say that the council has to approve any monetary contribution less than 200,000.
Yeah, it would
Right?
still have to come
It's,
to the
it's,
council.
that, we're still gonna know about the grant, because we have to approve the
So
money.
the intent, if the monetary contribution is less than 2,000, is the intent to allow the, land trust to move forward to accept the grant, if the contribution is less than 2,000?
No, I don't think taxpayer money has to go through the council.
Yeah, it actually does, it has to
Yeah.
actually,
You gotta put it in the budget.
you gotta put it in the budget,
So
the
the
budget has to be
that
approved.
first sentence to say,
Just change the first
any unreimbursable monetary contribution less than 200,000 needs council approval. And then follow it with the over 200,000. The rest of it.
Remember, that
Okay,
any,
would you like to try reading that?
Okay, let's see, all grants, including those for the benefit of the Bonnet Shores Land Trust, must receive approval from the district council if the grant is less than, and I'm gonna mess up you're gonna have to wordsmith this, unreimbursable monetary contribution of 200,000.
no, more than.
More than that, less.
Nope, this is less than, this is the,
But
coming to
that's
the.
already in the, if you're forgetting that any money that goes to the land trust gets put into the land trust budget. That budget has to be approved at an annual meeting,
Only one.
only, so you're not, yeah, you're.
But, so I think, so the point I hear though is, even if it's in the budget, if, like, we gave the land trust $1,500 this year to get them back up to their 7,000, right? That's what we did. So if they get a grant for 50,000, we have to put out 50,000 that's not reimbursable. They have to come to us.
No, they
But-
have to go to the people at the
They tell us
annual
what-
meeting,
yeah,
because
that's
it's
the
got a
land
land
trust
trust budget. What you're giving them for next year, that $1,700 or $1,500, has to go to the has to
Yes,
go.
but what she's saying is it has to go.
So if you were between the approved budget from one year to the next, I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's something
So
for
if something comes up,
$30,000.
something comes up between budget years, we've allocated it next to the land trust, they need to spend more than they have available. They don't have that money, so it's gonna have to come out of the budget of the council. So in order for it to come out of the budget of the council, whether or not it's $200,000 or less than 200,000, the council has to be aware, they cannot commit unilaterally to spend that money, because we don't even know if we have that money in the budget, admittedly. So that is the whole point of this. So the intent is not to limit the land trust ability to receive grants, but it's to ensure that if the land trust commits to accepting a grant, that the Bonnet Shores Fire District has the money to pay for it. Right?
Yep.
I mean, that's,
That's right.
yeah.
Correct.
Be aggressive.
No, we need another point.
That's correct. Like I said, it's just kept processing.
saying that you have a special meeting or an annual meeting, meaning you're gonna spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you need to look at section 2.
So, somebody, so what are we focused on, what we're discussing here, and, all grants?
I don't know, I think it should stay as is. All grants, including those for the benefit, must receive approval from the council. What is the word before authorization? Let's define what before authorization means, before they enter into.
Well, maybe, but want to end it with, from the council?
Yeah, it's from the council. Because it could be a variety of things, that's from the council. It's clear that we're bringing to the council.
And then grants exceeding an unreimbursed monetary contribution of 200,000 by the district will be processed through a budget amendment approved by at least 2/3 of qualified voters present at the meeting, the referendum at an annual meeting or special.
We have a motion to,
Do we have a motion to
approve,
as
this as read, to be placed on the agenda for
annual meeting or a special meeting?
Yeah, that'd be.
Because you might wanna have special meeting.
So placing it on the annual meeting this summer, if I may, we can run the meeting, we're gonna,
You need us.
this is, it's the special meetings for the year.
Yeah, the word special meeting, it says annual meeting.
So we are,
I will read. I second that. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Oh.
okay,
Seven
yeah,
thousand.
let's see what we have.
Did we make a motion of 7 to?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next matter is the levy cap. The district shall restrict any increase in its property tax levy or to a maximum of 10% of the previous year's amount that is budgeted to be raised by taxation or by the amount of the annual inflation per the CPI index all other consumers or year. Or if you just want to say by the amount of the annual inflation CPI index. So, do we have a motion with respect to the proposed bylaw amendment on levy cap? And then do we have a second, and then we'll have a discussion. Do we have a motion on the levy cap proposed bylaw? I make a motion on the levy cap.
I'll second.
James seconds it. Any discussion?
Now let's have our discussion. Originally, the levy cap for cities and towns by state law is 4%. Originally, the first draft was 4%. We have discussed this at council meetings, and we had input from Lori and John, and I believe the number we all arrived at was 10%. We thought we needed more.
Isn't the budget done before the annual meeting?
John, 4% would have been $20,000. So we would give him $20,000 as sufficient.
At 10, you're at 51 if you look at it.
So that was the thought process. That was this discussion of the budget.
The budget is done before the annual meeting. You can't wait till the annual meeting to approve this if you've gotta do the budget.
No, this will be going forward.
To go forward.
$26 was the big
All of
account.
these, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
All of
next
these
year.
items are for next year.
These will all apply next year.
Yeah, we've already.
Okay, any more discussion on this, so we can move this meeting along? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
All right, so, just before I give you my vote, I still have a question. So what happens if we find out we need more than 10%? I mean, which of these sections is gonna allow us to bypass the 10% if we need the money that we know?
Will you come back to the people?
No,
You come back to the people. In the way it works in state government,
Robin said it.
in state government, you have to go back to the general assembly. There's some accountability for levy caps, and that's why we need it.
So in our case, we'd have to call special meeting
Yes.
about the 10%.
Yeah, just like the
And so-
state province has to go to the general assembly.
You know, so we wait for the general meeting in June, then I just trying to think about all the different scenarios.
Yeah, so thinking it through, you could come back for a special meeting to exceed the 10% during the budget year.
We have a special meeting anytime.
You could do it during the budget, or you could do it during the budget year.
Yeah,
And it would have to be a special assessment if it was during the budget.
No. This isn't an assessment. This
No,
is,
but if you want to increase the budget by 10%, we would have already collected the revenue, so we would have to be guys.
we're gonna know when we do the budget, because we're gonna be.
What I'm trying to say is during the year, so let's just say during the year, not in preparation for the budget. It's during the year, we identify that we need to increase.
Well, that is this, as far as I think this,
Well, that's what I'm trying to
I think,
understand.
Leslie, this is basically saying we're doing the budget, and we find out that when we pull the budget together, that we are over 10% from the previous year's budget.
Right. So
And
you
then,
have to-
and so then we have to pop it back down to 10%, and so, what I'm saying is if there was something catastrophic, how do we fund that catastrophe?
We go to the people just like the city of Providence and Woonsocket now have to go to the general assembly. It's called checks and balances. State government.
We're talking about a $500 million budget here. This district has never.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. We're running the meeting.
You're not running the meeting, you need us. You need us for history. You guys
I
don't
just,
do it.
I just have a reservation about this, but it's just, again, I am fiscally responsible, but I also don't want to hamstring the fire district of this if something really came up, and yes, okay, we'll go to a special meeting, which will take, we'll know how long to do, but, and I just, you know.
So John, and I hear
again,
you, no, I hear you.
Yeah.
So I wanna ask though, cause you asked what's the trap door,
Right.
right, what else could we use? If something came up, could we use a special assessment without going, right, this is an 11. This is like a special one-time, a special assessment, everybody gets charged $100.
And then hopefully it goes away, but you don't know that for sure, so doing the budget and being in this now for 2 years, I just been, this is my, of all the sections, this is the one that, for a $500,000 budget, which, when you look at how, I've been involved with budgets that are $1 million, and I'm sure all, the communities that are like 10, 20, $30 million budgets, 4% or 10% makes a lot of sense. It's just that with our budget being as small as it is, there are a number of things that could happen that could throw the budget off.
I think the cap and levy is one of the most important proposals that we really need to.
Well, I mean, I can just agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, so I'm just saying. It's crossing your fingers.
And, any further discussion? Okay.
Yeah, again, put your mic up a little closer, please.
Yeah.
They don't hear on Zoom, so.
So he doesn't wanna be.
We had a motion, we had a second, all in favor? So four. Yeah. Four. Okay, I think we have to go back.
Extraordinary costs.
And then,
Those costs associated with a declared emergency may be excluded from the levy cap. We have this nice little provision for extraordinary costs. Expenses incurred for immediate response, preparation, recovery, and restoration of district services following an extreme weather event or catastrophic occurrences. The exception applies only to those costs that exceed what would typically be incurred under normal non-emergency conditions. Approval of these extraordinary charges requires support by at least 2/3 of the district council. If you just want to make it a majority, that's fine. Fully allocated for these costs shall be treated as a one-time request, subject to adjustmentation and federal and state reimbursements. You may get FEMA money or something like that. So this is for unforeseen emergency expenses, and,
Isn't that covered under 2B?
and this provides for something that may occur above the levy cap. So we have that provision that if it's beyond the levy cap, we can still address it as an extraordinary cost.
so just, we got the capital, we got the storm, we got the operating. Give me an example of it, I'm not, there's challenges, I just want an example of what.
Tornado comes through and picks up this building and it's gone.
That's storm.
We have insurance.
Not for acts of God.
That's storm though, that's your storm.
The storm wouldn't be sufficient based upon the storm infrastructure of the fund.
So, let's talk about the beaches. So a hurricane comes and takes away all the sand, and we have to put the sand back. That's not covered by insurance. It's not gonna be covered by $60,000.
It did 2 years ago.
Huh?
It did 2 years ago.
It did?
Yeah, we had 2 storms.
No, it was covered by insurance?
Yeah,
Or-
that was by,
Yeah, that's what I, okay. But what if we have to buy some? We have to buy some.
You think it's still.
And what is, I don't know if they had to buy it, but they had to take it from where it ended up.
Yes, they moved it, and they sprayed it, and they did all. Yeah. I'm just trying to, even for the public, to give an example of something that would be included in this, that's nothing.
So what is what basically is the opposition to this? I don't.
If anything, it gives us more
Okay.
We need to capture.
I'm not opposed to it, I just wanna understand what would fall in it, that's all.
Anything that didn't cover in the other place.
It's all, everything else.
Define.
All right, and there's nothing wrong with that, because it gives us flexibility, right?
And are we comfortable with the 2/3 versus majority? Either way is fine.
Don't matter to you. I mean, if it's a bad thing, I don't think whether it's a majority or 2/3, we should be able to get the vote, or either way.
Okay, do we have a motion to pass section 9 as read by Kate? Do we have a second? No further discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, now we have to go back and we have to reword the original 3 funds, so. No preamble, introductory paragraph, restriction established, it will be 2 funds, right? No, 3 funds.
No, that's what we tabled one.
No, we dropped the third one.
Yeah, we dropped 2D, no operating expenses.
Yep, so we have. So do we have a motion to change that language? Do we have a second? Further discussion, all in favor? So Article 5, financial matters, passed as revised. Article 6, I'm sorry. 6, the financial matters, passed as revised. And do we have a motion to place the financial matters, Article 6, as revised, on the annual agenda? If you want to follow up with that, of the meeting in August, for both like the people. Another motion? Second it. All in favor? Item number 5, annual meeting. Annual meeting agenda, review, discuss, revise, reconsider, revoke, and changes to that annual meeting agenda based on further research conducted. This includes an update on the consultation with the Bachelor's by District Legal Counsel regarding the proposed opinion poll and the scenarios to be included.
Yep, I'm gonna speak to it. So, the takeaway from here was a couple of things to talk to Tom Dickinson. The first one was brought up because our charter talks about everything that we do in the annual meeting in terms of a vote is binding. We wanted to clarify that we could issue an opinion poll and have it not be binding. And I'm gonna read again from my notes with the meeting with Tom. Yes, we can. We can conduct an opinion poll at the annual meeting and have it be non-binding as long as the opinion poll will not be part of the actual ballot, but a separate sheet where community members can express their point of view. So it's not gonna be with the ballot, it's gonna be a separate sheet, right? And it's basically recording, their opinion. More importantly, in the agenda, I added that we have to revisit, what we're actually going to ask them. And, we had a conversation, kind of between the 3 of us, and, the way that I came away from that is that while we can choose to include any options that we want, we need to first clarify how we intend to use the information that we collect. We talked about the 2 charter revision committees, and the current council has had a chance at this, to devise a solution. The first charter committee proposed residents only, which was,
There were 2, proposals. You're ignoring the one that was submitted in, January of 23, and only including the one for 24. You should go back and look at the one from 23, because it did encompass about 87 to 88% of the people.
well, so that would be taxpayers under the definition of residents. All right, okay, so anyway, there were 2 charter committees that came up with opinions, right? The second charter committee, the first one obviously something that a lot of people aren't gonna like or whatever, but the current state was something that was put in by Judge Taft Carter as an interim solution until we update the chart. So we haven't updated the charter yet. So if the goal of the data that we receive is to figure out where the temperature of the community is regarding, do they want residents only? Do they want some involvement in the property ownership of the beach club, which seems to be the biggest sticking point? Then put the two that are on those two solutions that came from the committees, put those on the ballot, not on the ballot, on the opinion poll, and let the community tell us, because we know current state is not supposed to be current. So that's and I know that John, I'm kind of directing this a little bit to you, because when we talked about the opinion poll, you said let's just put the three on there. And I kind of thought, agreed with that as well. I think we all did, we all voted it through. But I want to revisit that decision, because if we get a bunch of people that are just checking current state, how does that help us change the charter?
None of this comes through, when you really think about it, but I'm just saying is, at least you'll find out that there are still a lot of people that just want to do this just like they do.
There are,
Yeah.
but is that, you can't do that, because unless,
I mean, we've had two charter committees come up with it, and like I said, we still don't have a solution. And all I'm just suggesting is, let's just get the temperature of the three different scenarios. You've got the two extremes, and you've got the middle.
And that's, okay, so I was part of the conversation with, Jane and I were the two who talked with the attorney, because I had the issues on the bylaws and she had some charter stuff. When people talk about the first thing that came out of the charter committee, that I could never support, because it didn't stick with residency as defined in Rhode Island law, and the General Assembly clearly has no interest in that after the hearings that took place. So then, it was very evident they did. The second charter committee proposed residents only. Residents only has the definition of residence at home, someone who is a permanent resident domiciled in Rhode Island who can register to vote in Rhode Island. So we are looking at that one that came out of the whole charter committee. Then we are looking at what the new council has done, and we revisited committee, and we're seeing that the most popular one out of it was a 1 unit, 1 vote, and then the council unanimously, yourself, John, 7-0, voted for 1 unit, 1 vote. How can we sit there with existing state? And
so,
that,
okay, this is about the opinion poll.
Right.
So, going back to my first question, what are we gonna do with the data that we get on this, right? We're gonna have, wait a minute, we've got an extremely, consistent group that comes, that has a point of view here. We have our conversations that I have with community residents and taxpayers and beach club people, that I get a completely different mixed view from. Some of them want a current state, some of them want some tempered beach club participation. So what I want to get out of this poll is a broader perspective of the community, because not everybody's coming to the meetings, not everybody's raising their hands, not everybody's doing that. That's what I want out of this. But then I also think about, what if it all comes back current state? What if everybody checks current state? Okay, that's an opinion of the majority of the community, but what do we do with that?
we can't do anything with it.
That's why they so something.
All,
That's it.
So, let's talk about it. I don't mind having all three, but,
here's my rationale for all three.
okay.
Is don't know what we're gonna do with
And,
this.
well, that's the question, and the more you think through this process, the idea is to find a solution and to bring this to closure for the people. So how is presenting existing state, which because of litigation and threats of more litigation, bringing this to solution? It isn't, and that is the concern.
If we have current state, I think it's setting an expectation that there's a chance of that. And the reality is, even if the community as a whole wanted it, it may not make it because there may be legal challenges, right? So.
Then I question us doing it at all, because it's like, why are we?
But the problem is.
Because
Yes, so the problem is, and I agree with Jay, we hear a lot of different information from a lot of different people, and the thing is, I don't know what this community really wants, right? And so we're just trying to hear what this community is.
So then I thought about,
And also manage expectations about what is realistic to go to the General Assembly, and what is realistic for the General Assembly to consider, and what is realistic to bring back to the community for.
right, so the other thing I thought of is to give people a voice and not just a binary, no, I don't like it or not, is in the opinion poll, if we just offer the two that the charter committees came up with, then at the bottom, solicit, if you don't want either one of these, tell us why. And that's maybe where the beach club people or people in the community who want current state can say, because, X, Y, Z, you will have that narrative, from the opinion. Because I honestly, I absolutely so much appreciate the people that come here regularly and express the opinion. But there are, thousands of other people out there that have as strong opinions. They just, I don't know, it's not
The line of the Constitution is not something that people with opinion matter.
But, so let's just say there is no one in this room or no one sitting at this table that is a constitutional scholar. No one is a judge, and so therefore, I don't think that there's anybody here who can absolutely say that a judge would decide this or a judge would decide that.
But you're not right, you're not right, because we did have the opinion of a
Okay,
constitutional attorney. No,
excuse me.
you need us.
Say we were, okay, so at this point, let's
You're
end.
the rest of the community.
Let's forward. Again, it is opinion poll so that people can get an idea of where we stand in the community. Those that are quiet, those that are soft-spoken, and those that are outspoken, okay? We will have an idea. What we do with it, we don't know, okay? But if we ever get to the General Assembly and we can ever put something forward, at least we will have some data to bring forward with it, okay?
You can't offer them something they can't have.
But again, there's an opinion of what someone can.
But they don't understand. They just don't understand. It's not that what they want, we have that.
So, hold on, and I know that this is again, it's just such a fun topic. To your point, Helen, they don't understand. But are you going to go, when we finally do have a solution, which we will get to, are you going to go and educate them on why, there's going to be people that just check a box. It's just, I mean, the time. Well, no, we want the opinion. I want the opinion. So I'm voting for the poll. But I think that what we have to decide right now, and John has expressed to include all three, right? We have to all three.
We have three,
Oh, we're gonna have I mean, we voted to have a poll. That's
You have to explain
what I'm suggesting is, I guess I have to make a motion to, possibly amend the poll, right, that we've already agreed to have. And then if somebody seconds that, then we can have a discussion, is it gonna be all three options, or is it just gonna be the two that the child committee?
Jay, could you repeat
I
what
like
Dickinson
I
said?
like what Jane is saying, like, have two, and then just say, if not, if neither, comma, why. Just simple,
with an option for.
Explanation.
Yeah, just to come, if they want to come. We're just doing this to find out what's going on. There's people people that argue, and I have too, that in the Rhode Island Constitution, it references city and town. And we're not a city or town, except on the, except on the 501c3 application, where they put some addresses, Bonnet Shores, Rhode Island, 02882. So that piece of garbage, but I don't know whether there. But
And you might be like,
the Constitution, it just references, I see, city and town, in the voting, in the Rhode Island Constitution. And I don't think we're a city or town, you know?
Read the
So
judge's
let's just, I agree, I think we should just do the two with a reason why.
What two?
The two that, not the,
The two that are-
yeah, the two charter committees, and just find out what's going on, that's all we're gonna do, we're not gonna hold them to anything, you know? And we gotta find out what's going on.
The second one,
Gotta
you can
find out.
approve it, but just so you know, proposed electorate number one deeded designated unit, owner per unit, that doesn't solve the problem of dilution, which is in the consent
well,
judgment.
we're not gonna revisit it.
No, but you have to be realistic. The dilution issue is there.
So we're not gonna get into this, but I'm a full-time resident here, and my vote, I live here 365 days a year, and my vote is diluted. My vote's diluted by part-time residents, my vote is diluted by landlords, my vote is diluted by everybody.
Alright, so we're not gonna get into the, like, revisiting the entire discussion. So we're here to say, one, we've already voted, we're gonna have a poll. So two, that was last week, right, that's why the last special meeting, we voted, we're gonna have an opinion. We got clearance from Tom that we can have it without it being non-binding, because that was his big concern.
Why you do what you're gonna
Right.
do.
And so, well, we're gonna do that. So, I don't know, can we recognize?
You know, it's up to the chair what she wants to do, but seriously, we allowed public comment at the beginning. We did this purposely, we're trying to run a government meeting, it's not a town hall. And I feel sorry for you, because other people have been interjecting throughout the meeting, so.
Leslie,
I
sure.
feel
All right.
that's-
Right.
Why, so, no, if I talk there, to the mic, oh, okay, I wanna hear.
You haven't spoken public comment anyway, so we'll take the last word.
Neil Prescott from Wolf Road. The council agreed to some solution that you sent to the Senate, right? So why don't you simply do a poll that says, can you live with it? Because at the end of the day, that's the question. Why don't you poll to ask people, can you live with what you guys like? And see what the community says. Because that's effectively what you're trying to get.
So, and Neil, I would agree with you, but I actually wanna go a little bit more granular than that, because I wanna know where there's the popular vote of residents only, mixed with the beach club, and.
But you won't know who's voting for.
So, no, but we'll have numbers, we'll have data. If I just go, can you live with it, I'm gonna get, maybe 50-50, half yes and half no, but I'm not gonna know that other 50 that can't live with it, where their opinions are. And that's why
Yeah, there are a lot of
Yeah.
assumptions and statements
Maybe
about
not.
can't use a lot, so we're trying to just figure out potentially, who is voting for.
not who, but.
Not who, but what category, what category, yes.
So anyway, again, the motion on the table is to discuss considering the change from 3 to 2, or 3 to 2. And either way, whatever, I just threw it out there.
And so it would be eliminating existing standards.
Anybody second that motion? All right, so discussion.
So again, I think I'm comfortable with eliminating it only because the reality is that it doesn't solve dilution. And you don't
Neither
get
does
there.
two.
So,
I think I would agree with this.
so you just want to, if we want to, and get rid of current state.
Yeah, because we gotta compromise somehow, we don't wanna get
I mean,
lost.
the idea is to get a solution. We're here, and we spent years trying to get a solution. Let's put the two solutions, the two viable solutions. We know the first one is not viable.
No, wait a minute, wait a second.
Excuse me, and what I see as a viable, is has not been discussed. The General Assembly had 2 hearings on the first one. It was clear that that first one was going nowhere, and there is no sense of putting that on.
It's because
So,
we're gonna split this weekly, that's what I'm voted again.
yeah. So I think we've got 2 solutions. Let the people comment or express their views.
And what are you gonna do when it's?
Oh,
So just, it's reducing that from the 3 to 2. But we need to talk about adding.
Yeah, and adding a commentary, like, they can comment on anything, but specifically, if you want to share comments, please do, but if you don't agree with either one, please tell us why.
and John,
I'm still free.
You're still,
I haven't changed my mind,
okay.
I still think that there's a bunch of people that want to keep it as is.
They keep,
I understand it, but I'm just trying to
No,
represent
you're
all.
you just confuse the entire public by offering them something they cannot have.
Take it out. You're dangling a carrot.
You're dangling a carrot they can't have.
So no
And
further
you're gonna make it even worse than it is now.
Move on. All in favor? So it's 4 to 1. Right, the next item, annual meeting process, review, discussion, with wisdom, consideration, vote on any additional edits to the annual meeting process.
So the only thing left on this one is on the agenda, there was a bunch of color coding. I had to take away going back and looking at previous year's agendas. I talked to Janice quite a bit. So what I did was, because the way that this is written is you can't go into the paper, or this was like a lot of notes and stuff about what, like, we're not gonna have the options on the agenda. It'll cost a fortune to publish in the paper. So what you have is a clean copy of the agenda. I printed it out this morning, that basically is the same thing, just if you look at this, it's just the big capital, number items, and I added in, I had forgotten election results. So that has to be done before adjournment. So if you look at this clean copy that will go into the paper, I think I'd like to take a vote on just, two clean public copy.
I got one question.
Yep.
Tell me if this is on here. So I'm going to the bylaws, section 3B, which lists the annual meeting notice shall include the agenda, the budget, appointment of the nominating committee, appointing task force, the report of the treasurer. But it also has dates of regularly scheduled board fire district council. I believe because this is in the bylaws, we've got to list that.
I don't think, Janice, you can help, I don't think it has to be on the agenda as long as it's in the newsletter.
Okay.
No, it has to be on the.
So, well, it hasn't been on any other agenda.
Yes, it has.
So, like, things like the upcoming years.
Yeah, that's
meetings,
out there.
it doesn't have
That's
to be
gotta be in there.
on the agenda, it has to be in the packet, correct?
So it says.
Please, go look at 2024's agenda, it wasn't on it.
In addition
It's,
to the.
it's part of the packet.
It's in the newsletter.
It's gotta be, it's
It's gotta be in
what
the
she's talking about, she's talking about the agenda.
Yeah, so it
You
says,
can have the meetings for a year.
so it's,
No,
It's not on the agenda.
okay.
It's in a.
This is the agenda, just like, not the newsletter, this is the things that we're gonna talk about.
I understand,
All right.
so I just
We
don't
don't
want to.
have to talk about the annual, the 12 months of meetings. It has to be in there as an attachment, but it doesn't have to be addressed verbally on the agenda.
Okay.
This is the verbal stuff.
Right.
All right, so just, do we have a,
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, the intent, I don't think the intent is going to be big as big as last year, but maybe we could get another hour out of this or something, like maybe 10 minutes.
Because but the date, it is right here on page 2, 3 of the Bible.
Yeah, I just read it, I
The
got
date
it.
of the regularly scheduled.
Right, but what she's saying is it doesn't have to be on the agenda, it has to be provided. It doesn't,
it has to be
the way I read the notice says,
I apologize.
the annual meeting notice, I interpret it the
I got
same
it.
way.
Yeah. No worries, no worries. Hey, trust me, it takes a village.
Well, you should
the information from the village on more than one occasion, because
Well,
we really have history
so,
here.
so, we make a vote, just, this is going to be the printed agenda that goes out.
I make the motion.
Make a motion.
So do we have a motion to approve the proposed final clean copy of the agenda for the Bonnet Fire District 2025 annual meeting?
We're still gonna go 8 to 10, but
So we have a motion, let's do a second, and then we'll do a discussion. Second, okay, discussion?
Just wondering, like, you know, that 8 to 10, or, you know,
Do we think 8 to 10 is sufficient time, Janice, like,
I don't know if it's sufficient, but I wouldn't cut it shorter. There's no way.
and I was saying
Cut
8
it
to 11,
shorter.
like 8 to
oh,
11.
well,
No?
I thought you were cutting it shorter.
say 8 to 11.
it'll be 3 hours, people out.
Now, we can come by 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Try it,
it's
but-
gonna-
Yeah, just think.
Sense of urgency, people have to get it in the
What happened last time, if people are still in line, can't start the meeting anyway. And we're gonna try everything possible here, shorten the line, that's all I can do.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
I'm done.
I still think you should put these bylaw changes for Article 1, Section 2 on the agenda for this
Okay.
coming.
So the motion passes 5 to 0.
Now, change the bylaw.
Number 6, adjournment, the meeting is adjourned, 8:39. Motion to the meeting at 8:39. Second? All in favor?
No, I know. Nobody, there's really not zoning
Recording stopped.